Jenna's car tires crunched on the long gravel driveway as she pulled up to the looming Victorian house. It sat back from the road, surrounded by twisted oak trees whose bare branches reached menacingly toward the clouded sky. The old place had been a steal. The realtor said just needed some elbow grease to spruce it up. Jenna wasn't put off by its rundown appearance. In fact, part of her loved the idea of restoring such a piece of history to its former glory. As she made her way up the creaky steps to the front porch, the house seemed to lean inward, as if studying this new owner. Jenna shivered, though not from the cold, damp air. She couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that the house was watching her. Shaking off the thought, she fumbled with the ancient iron key and stepped over the threshold. Inside, the musty smell of decades greeted her, the air thick and stale. Faded wallpaper peeled in long strips, making her nose crinkle. "Well, this is certainly going to be a project," Jenna said with a wry laugh. Her voice echoed down the dark hallway, creaking floorboards seeming to answer back in a question. Jenna moved slowly toward the living room, running her fingers along the dusty bookshelves that lined the hallway. As her fingertips grazed the spines, she could have sworn she heard a faint whisper. She froze, holding her breath as she strained to listen. Just her mind playing tricks, she decided after a few seconds of silence. By nightfall, she had settled into the old house with a few belongings and takeout for dinner. As she sat on the sagging sofa, poking at a lukewarm burrito, the floorboards above her groaned. Her head whipped up, staring at the ceiling as another sound joined the chorus. Ever since Jenna moved into the old Victorian house, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. At first, it was just little things, doors creaking open by themselves, footsteps echoing in the night when no one was around. She chalked it up to the house settling, the quirks of living in a place with so much history. But then the whispers started. It did first, like the rustling of leaves outside her bedroom window. She tried ignoring them, but they grew louder and more insistent with each passing night. Jenna would lie awake, covers pulled tight, straining to make out the mutterings that seemed to emanate from the very walls around her. "Hello," she called out one night, her voice trembling. "Is someone there?" The whispering stopped abruptly, silence enveloping the room like a thick fog. Jenna's heart pounded in her chest as she fumbled for the light switch, and then it came. A guttural hiss, like the escape of foul air from uncounted years trapped inside the house.
"Get out!"
The raspy voices overlapped, some high and scratchy, others deep like rolling thunder. Jenna screamed and scrambled from her bed, fleeing the room as the whispering grew in a deafening crescendo of malice all around her. In the days that followed, the voices tormented her relentlessly, offering horrifying glimpses of the house's past, of families murdered in their beds, the crunch of bones underfoot, the reek of decay. Jenna couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The cacophony of whispering voices, clawing at her sanity. She knew she should leave, but some perverse curiosity made her stay. Maybe if she listened closer, she could finally understand what the voices wanted from her. One night, she lit candles in her bedroom and settled cross-legged on the floor, the maddening whispering swirling around her like a sinister cyclone. "I'm here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper itself. "I'm listening." The voices fell abruptly silent. Then a new sound, the slow rhythmic creaking of the house's ancient bones. The floorboards trembled under her, as something large seemed to uncurl from the very foundations. Jenna's blood turned to ice in her veins as the sprawling tendrils emerged, wriggling toward her in the flickering candlelight. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came. The whispers spoke as one, a unified chorus of billion-year conquest.
This house is ours.
What came out from the gaps between worlds in that endless moment, Jenna could never unsee. Her mind broke into a million pieces, the price for witnessing the eternal awaiter. In the weeks that followed, neighbors grew worried over the constant whispering that leaked from the house at all hours. The slithering voices carried through walls and windows, clawing at their ears, maddeningly insisting they heed the dreadful call. When the authorities finally broke down the door, they found Jenna in the upstairs bedroom, a disturbing scene of spiraling madness. She was hunched in the corner, fingernails worn down to stubs from furiously scratching bizarre symbols into the wooden floor. Her eyes were sunken back into hollow sockets, endless black pits that seemed to drink in all light and hope. Jenna's voice was completely gone, stolen. As the officers approached, her cracked lips parted, and a chorus of other whispers poured out a dissonant roar of billions conquered, beckoning to be let back in. The men went deaf from the onslaught, blood gushing from their ruptured eardrums as their sanity was shredded. Afterwards, the house was boarded up tight and deemed unlivable by any human beings. They still don't understand what ancient force awoke within those walls, twisting Jenna's mind into an unholy vessel. To this day, those who walk too close to the cursed place at night hear the frantic whispering, like the incessant scratching of countless insects under the foundations. But the voices call out, offering the oblivion of witnessing that which cannot be grasped, daring the curious to unlock the dreadful secret of the house on Black Ridge Road. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just my imagination. A faint, haunting melody drifting through the air as I walked home from my late-night shift at the hospital. It was beautiful, yet somehow wrong, like a lullaby sung by a grieving mother. I shook it off, chalking it up to exhaustion. But then I heard it again the next night, and the next. Always at 3:17 a.m., always when I was alone on that quiet street. I tried to record it once, but my phone only picked up static. When I mentioned it to my coworkers, they looked at me like I was losing it. Maybe I was. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I followed the sound, my heart pounding as the melody grew louder. It led me to an old music box store I'd passed 100 times but never noticed before. The sign read Melodies of Memory in faded gold letters. Through the grimy window I could see rows upon rows of music boxes, their lids closed, waiting. As I stood there transfixed, the door creaked open on its own. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But that haunting melody pulled me in like a siren's song. Inside, dust motes danced in the dim light. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding dozens of music boxes of all shapes and sizes. In the center of the room stood a single, ornate music box on a pedestal. Its lid was open, a tiny ballerina frozen mid-pirouette. But no music played. As I approached, the ballerina's head slowly turned to face me. Its painted eyes blinked. I stumbled back, knocking into a shelf. Music boxes crashed to the floor, their lids flying open. And then the music started. Hundreds of melodies filled the air, a cacophony of tinkling notes that burrowed into my brain. Each one felt alive and hungry. Ghostly shapes began to rise from the music boxes, translucent, twisted figures caught in eternal dances. Their faces were masks of agony and ecstasy. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't move. The ghostly dancers circled me, their cold fingers caressing my skin. The ballerina music box began to play its song, the melody I'd been hearing all along. It drowned out all the others, filling my head until I could think of nothing else. I felt myself starting to fade, becoming lighter, less substantial. With horror, I realized what was happening. These weren't just music boxes, they were prisons, soul traps, and now I was becoming one of them. As my consciousness slipped away, I saw my body collapse to the floor. But I was still there, trapped in the ornate music box. The ballerina that had once been its prisoner now wore my face, smiling with relief as it walked out the door in my body. I tried to call out, to warn the world about the danger lurking in this innocuous shop. But all that came out was that haunting melody. Now I play my song night after night, hoping to lure someone in, not out of malice, but desperation. Because maybe if someone else takes my place, I can finally be free. But freedom, I've learned, is a cruel illusion in this place. You see, time doesn't move normally here. What feels like days to me might be years in the outside world. And in that time, I've seen things, horrible things. I've watched as other lost souls were drawn in, their essence drained and trapped just like mine. I've seen the shopkeeper, if you can call it that, emerge from the shadows. It's not human, not even close. Its form shifts and writhes, a mass of darkness with too many limbs and eyes that glow like dying stars. It tends to its collection with twisted care, polishing the music boxes, winding them up. Sometimes it opens a box and feeds. I can't describe the sounds, the sensation of a soul being devoured. It's a pain beyond anything the living can comprehend. But the worst part, the truly horrifying thing I've discovered, we're not really individuals anymore. All of us trapped souls, we're connected now. Our memories, our essences, they've begun to blur together. I can feel the others in my mind, their fears, their regrets, their fading identities merging with my own. There are hundreds of us, maybe thousands. And with each new victim, our shared consciousness grows. It's maddening. Imagine having the memories of a Victorian-era child mingling with those of a 1980s stockbroker and a medieval peasant, all swirling in your mind. So now as I play my nightly song, I'm torn. Part of me still desperately wants to escape, but another part, a growing part, wants to warn people away, because joining us now means becoming part of this eldritch hive mind, this gestalt of suffering that's building towards some unimaginable end. And yet, the loneliness, the maddening isolation of being trapped in this tiny box. Sometimes it's too much to bear. In those moments of weakness, I play my song louder, hoping to draw someone in, hating myself for it, but unable to stop. So if you're walking alone late at night and hear a strange, beautiful melody, please don't follow it. Don't let your curiosity get the better of you. Run. Run as fast as you can. But if you do come, if you do open the door to melodies of memory, know that a small, selfish part of me will be grateful, because I'm still here, trapped in this music box. And as much as I hate it, I'll do anything to escape. Sarah slumped in her desk chair, mindlessly scrolling through her social media feed. The soft glow of her phone illuminated her face in the dim bedroom, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind howled, rattling her window panes.
Ugh, another beach vacation,
she muttered, watching a video of her high school friend living it up in Bali.
Must be nice.
Sarah had always been the shy one, the wallflower. While her friends were out having adventures, she was stuck in her small hometown, working a dead-end job at the local diner. Her social media was a graveyard of sporadic posts and meager likes. Another day, another stream of perfectly curated lives. She sighed, tossing her phone aside and collapsing onto her bed.
Why can't my life be that exciting?
She muttered. As if in response, her phone chimed. A new follower request, at Shadow Clicker. Furious, Sarah opened the profile. It was blank, no posts, no info, just a default shadow avatar. She hesitated, then shrugged and accepted.
What's the worst that could happen?
That night, Sarah dreamed of shadows moving at the corner of her vision, always disappearing when she turned to look. She woke feeling uneasy, but dismissed it as nonsense. Over the next few days, Sarah noticed at Shadow Clicker liking her old posts, really old ones, from years ago. It was odd, but kind of flattering. Someone was actually interested in her life. Energized, Sarah started posting more. Selfies at the coffee shop, at work, at the gym. With each post, at Shadow Clicker was the first to like, always within seconds. A week later, Sarah was getting ready for bed when she decided to take one last selfie. "Night, everyone," she captioned it and hit post. Instantly, at Shadow Clicker liked it. Sarah frowned. It was 2 a.m. Who could be that active? A direct message popped up from at Shadow Clicker.
You should smile more.
Sarah's unease returned. She started to type a response, but another message appeared.
Like this.
A photo loaded, a selfie of Sarah smiling brightly. But she hadn't taken this picture. It was in her bedroom right now from an angle behind her. Sarah spun around, heart pounding. Her room was empty. When she looked back at her phone, the chat with its Shadow Clicker was gone. Had she imagined it? Shaken? Sarah decided to delete her account in the morning. She needed sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every creak, every shadow made her jump. Finally, as dawn approached, Sarah drifted off. She awoke to her phone buzzing incessantly. Dozens of notifications. Comments on her latest post.
OMG, Sarah, so creepy.
Is this a joke? Are you okay?
Be confused. Sarah opened her profile. Her heart stopped. Her profile picture had changed. It showed her sleeping, taken from above her bed. In the background, barely visible in the darkness, was a figure, pale skin, hollow eyes, wide, twisted grin. Sarah's scream caught in her throat as she felt cold breath on her neck and heard a raspy whisper.
I told you to smile more.
Your phone clattered to the floor as icy hands gripped her shoulders. The screen lit up one last time, displaying a new post. A close-up selfie of Sarah's terrified face. The entity's arms wrapped around her from behind. Username at the last selfie caption, "Found you. Thanks for the follows." In the days that followed, Sarah's friends and family desperately tried to reach her. Her social media remained active, posting cheerful updates and smiling selfies. But something was off. Sarah's in the photo seemed vacant, her smile forced. And at Shadow Clicker, it kept liking posts, kept following new accounts, always watching, always waiting for the perfect profile picture. I never believed in ghosts until I moved into this old house on Willow Street. It was a great deal too good to be true, I realize now. The real estate agent was overly eager to sell, and the previous owners practically gave it away. I should have known better, but the charm of the Victorian architecture and the spacious rooms blinded me to the warning signs. The first week was uneventful. I spent my time unpacking, arranging furniture, and planning renovations. It wasn't until the second week that things started to feel off. It began with little things. I'd put my coffee mug down on the kitchen counter, turned to grab the milk from the fridge and find the mug had moved to the other side of the room. I blamed it on lack of sleep and stress from the move. Then came the cold spots, pockets of frigid air that seemed to follow me from room to room, raising goosebumps on my skin even in the heat of summer. I called a repairman to check the air conditioning, but he found nothing wrong. The feeling of being watched was next. I'd be reading a book or watching TV and suddenly feel eyes on me. I'd whip around, heart pounding, but there was never anyone there, just empty rooms and silent hallways. I tried to rationalize it all. Old houses settle. Drafts are common. An overactive imagination can play tricks on you. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then came the noises from the basement. It started as faint scratching, like mice in the walls. I set traps, but they remained untouched. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. Sometimes I'd hear whispering too faint to make out words, but unmistakably human. The worst was the footsteps. Late at night, when the house was silent and dark, I'd hear them. Slow, deliberate steps climbing the basement stairs, pausing at the top. Then more steps, crossing the hall to stop just outside my bedroom door. The first time it happened, I was frozen in terror, unable to move, barely breathing. When I finally gathered the courage to look, there was no one there. Just the empty hallway and the basement door, closed as always. I avoided the basement after that. Something about that old wooden door at the bottom of the stairs filled me with dread. I told myself I was being silly, that there was nothing to fear. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was down there, waiting. I called a priest to bless the house, called paranormal investigators to check for spirits, called a therapist to see if I was losing my mind. None of it helped. The phenomena continued, growing stronger by the day. Objects would fly across the room when I wasn't looking. Doors would slam shut on their own. Once I woke to find all the furniture in my bedroom had been rearranged while I slept. I was at my breaking point. I decided to sell the house to cut my losses and run. But the night before I was to call the real estate agent, everything changed. I woke in the middle of the night to an eerie silence. The usual creaks and groans of the old house were absent. Even the crickets outside were quiet. As I lay there straining my ears in the darkness, I heard it. The footsteps, but not from the basement this time. They were coming from inside my room. These slow, squelching steps, like wet shoes on carpet. I could see nothing in the pitch black, but I could hear the footsteps approaching my bed. Then I felt it, an ice-cold hand brushing against my arm. I screamed and leaped from the bed, fumbling for the light switch. When the lights came on, my blood ran cold. There, leading from my bedroom door to the side of my bed, was a trail of muddy footprints. Heart pounding, I followed them out of the room and down the stairs. They led straight to the basement door, which stood open, revealing pitch blackness beyond. I knew I should run. Knew I should get out of the house and never come back. But some morbid curiosity drove me forward. I had to know what was down there. As I reached the top of the basement stairs, the door began to swing shut. Without thinking, I lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the door. As I pulled it open, a hand shot out of the darkness, ice-cold fingers wrapping around my wrist. I screamed and pulled away, slamming the door shut. I could hear something pounding on the other side, desperate to get out. A voice, raspy and inhuman, called my name. I ran back to my room, barricading the door with furniture. That was a week ago. I haven't left since. The pounding stopped after a few days, but now I hear scratching at my door. Whispering voices calling my name, begging me to come out. The scratching is getting louder. The door is starting to splinter. I don't think I have much time left. Whatever is in this house, whatever came from that basement, it's coming for me. I can hear the wood cracking, see the door beginning to bow inward. The door won't hold much longer. I can see hands reaching through the cracks, pale and rotting. The voices are louder now, no longer whispering. They're screaming my name. Just as the door is about to give way, I hear a new sound: sirens. Red and blue lights flash through my window. There's pounding on the front door downstairs, but it's different, urgent, human. Police. Open up. Relief floods through me. Someone must have heard my screams, called for help. The entity in my room recoils from the door as footsteps thunder up the stairs. In here I shout, my voice hoarse. Please help me. The police break down my bedroom door, flooding the room with light, but as they enter, their faces contort in confusion. Sir, are you all right? One officer asks, looking around the undamaged room. I turn to point at the splintered door, the ghostly hands, but there's nothing there. The door's intact, the room undisturbed. No sign of the horrors I'd witnessed. They take me to the station for questioning. I tell them everything, desperate for them to believe me. They exchange worried glances, clearly thinking I'm having some kind of breakdown. After hours of questioning, they decide to let me go. As I'm leaving, an old detective pulls me aside. "My son," he says, his voice low, "I believe you. That house, it has a history. My advice? Get out. Never go back." I nod, grateful that someone finally understands. I check into a hotel, determined to sell the house and move on with my life. But as I'm lying in bed that night, trying to sleep, I hear it. Faint at first, then growing louder. Slowly, the closet door begins to open. I realize then, with dawning horror, that it was never about the house. Whatever was in that basement, it's attached itself to me. And now there's nowhere left to run. As pale, rotting hands reach out from the darkness of the closet, I understand the true meaning of the detective's words. I can never go back because I never truly left. Just as the door creaks opens, it was empty. I sighed with relief. But then my phone buzzed, a post from my sister, Sarah. As he collapsed onto the bed with relief, his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Hey bro, you okay? You've been missing in action for days. Call me." Jack sighed, guilt washing over him. He hadn't told Sarah about what happened at the house. How could he explain the impossible things he'd seen? The ghostly figures, the whispers in the dark, the feeling of malevolent presence that permeated every corner of their childhood home. They'd sold the house years ago, after their parents' death. But recently, Jack had received news that the current owners were selling. On a whim, driven by nostalgia and a desire to finally confront the past, he'd decided to buy it back. He'd told Sarah he was just going to check it out, maybe fix it up as an investment property. He never expected to encounter anything supernatural. He was about to reply to Sarah when another notification popped up. Sarah had tagged him in a social media post. Curious, he opened it. It was a selfie of Sarah smiling brightly. The caption read, "Missing my big bro. At Jack, where are you hiding? Family love." As Jack stared at the photo, a chill ran down his spine. In the background, barely visible in the mirror behind Sarah, was a shadowy figure. Its features were indistinct, save for a wide, unnatural grin. Jack's heart raced. It couldn't be. He blinked hard, but when he looked again, the figure was gone. Had he imagined it? Shaken, Jack decided to call Sarah. But before he could, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, he answered cautiously. Jack came an elderly woman's voice. My name is Margaret. We need to talk about what happened at the house. Jack's blood ran cold. How do you? There's no time to explain, Margaret cut him off. The entity you encountered, it's not finished. It's found a new target. Sarah, Jack whispered, the realization hitting him like a punch to the gut. Yes, Margaret confirmed. The ghost is drawn to strong emotional connections. Your bond with your sister, the memories you both share of that house, it's like a beacon to the entity. But why, Jack asked, his mind reeling. Why us? There was a long pause before Margaret spoke again. Because of what happened there, Jack. The night your parents died. Jack felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. The car accident. The rainy night. He and Sarah had been at a sleepover, but their parents, they'd been driving home, to the house on Black Ridge Road. The ghost, Margaret continued, her voice heavy with sorrow. It feeds on tragedy, on unresolved pain. Your parents' sudden death, the grief you and Sarah buried deep inside, it's been waiting all these years, growing stronger, waiting for one of you to return. And I did, Jack said, the weight of guilt crushing him. When I went to clear out the house for sale, you opened the door, Margaret confirmed. And now it won't stop until it has both of you. As if on cue, Jack's phone buzzed with another notification. A new post from Sarah. Look what I found in the attic, taking a trip down memory lane. Childhood home. The photo showed Sarah standing in the dusty attic of their old house on Black Ridge Road. She was holding an old family photo, smiling at the camera. But behind her, in the shadowy corner of the attic, two glowing eyes stared directly at the camera. I have to go, he told Margaret, already grabbing his keys. I have to save her. Jack, wait, Margaret called out. You can't face this alone. You need. But Jack had already hung up, rushing out of the hotel room. As he sprinted to his car, his phone lit up with one last notification. A message from Sarah. Come home, Jack. The whole family's waiting. Jack's hands shook as he started the car. He had unknowingly led this entity to Sarah, and now he had to make it right. Whatever it took, he would save his sister and put an end to the ghost that had haunted their family for far too long. As he sped into the night, towards the house, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly what the entity wanted all along. Jack's car screeched to a halt in front of the old house on Black Ridge Road. The once familiar structure now loomed ominously in the darkness, its windows like hollow eyes staring down at him. He could feel a palpable sense of malevolence emanating from within. As he approached the front door, his phone buzzed one last time. A live video was starting on Sarah's account. With trembling hands, he opened it. The video showed Sarah in the attic, her back to the camera. Welcome home, Jack, she said, her voice distorted and overlaid with static. She turned, revealing eyes as black as midnight. We've been waiting for you. The video cut off abruptly. Jack steeled himself and entered the house. Inside, the air was thick and cold. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, always just at the edge of his vision. As he climbed the stairs, whispers echoed through the hall's fragments of memories, moments of joy and pain from their childhood. In the attic, he found Sarah standing motionless, staring at an old family photo. Sarah, he called cautiously. She turned, her face splitting into an unnaturally wide grin. Oh, Jack, she said, but it wasn't her voice. So nice of you to join us. The family's all here now. Suddenly, spectral figures materialized around them, pale, twisted versions of their parents, of past owners, of all those who had suffered in this house. "You brought us back, Jack," the entity speaking through Sarah hissed. "Your guilt, your pain, your desperate attempt to cling to the past, it gave us strength. And now you'll join us, forever." The ghosts closed in, their cold hands reaching for him. Jack felt despair washing over him, the weight of his guilt threatening to crush him. But then he remembered Margaret's words, "The ghost feeds on unresolved pain." And in that moment, Jack understood. He turned to Sarah, to the entity possessing her, and spoke from his heart. "I'm sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, Sarah. I'm sorry I couldn't save our parents. I'm sorry I tried to bury the past instead of facing it." He took a step forward, even as the cold intensified around him. "But I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm not alone. Sarah, if you can hear me, remember we have each other. We always have." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Sarah's eyes flickered. "Jack," she whispered, her true voice breaking through. The attic erupted into chaos. The ghost shrieked, the very walls of the house shaking. Jack reached out and grabbed Sarah's hand. "Let go of the pain," he told her. "Let go of the guilt. We can't change the past, but we have each other now. That's what matters." Sarah's eyes cleared, tears spilling down her cheeks. The siblings hugged each other tightly as the maelstrom of supernatural energy swirled around them. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the attic. The spirits wailed, their forms seeming to disintegrate in the radiance. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, leaving behind nothing but an old, quiet house. "Is it over?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky. Jack nodded, relief washing over him. "I think so. We did it, Sarah. We're free." And hand in hand, they hurried down the stairs and out of the house, not wanting to linger a moment longer. As they reached Jack's car, they turned to look back at the old house on Blackridge Road. It stood silent, no longer emanating the sense of malevolence they had felt earlier. "We should leave," Jack said. "Get as far away from here as possible." Sarah nodded in agreement. As they drove away, the rising sun at their backs, they felt a weight lifting from their shoulders. They had faced their past, confronted their guilt, and emerged victorious. However, their sense of triumph was premature. As the house receded in the rear-view mirror, a shadow passed across an upstairs window. Inside the attic, a cold wind stirred, and a whisper echoed in the empty room. "You can't escape us that easily." The entity had not been defeated, merely weakened and driven into temporary dormancy. It waited patiently, gathering its strength, knowing that the connection it had forged with Jack and Sarah would eventually draw them back. As Jack and Sarah drove towards what they believed was a new beginning, they were unaware that their ordeal was far from over. The entity bided its time, its influence subtly reaching out, planting seeds of unease in their minds. In their phones buzzed simultaneously. A new post appeared on both their accounts. "Home is where the heart is. We'll be waiting." Family reunion. The siblings, caught up in their relief, didn't notice the post. But the entity's patience was infinite. Sooner or later, Jack and Sarah would realize that escaping the horrors wouldn't be as simple as driving away. Over the next few weeks, Jack worked on getting the house ready for sale, and a month later, sold the house to a girl named Jenna. Dr. Teresa Chen yawned as she made her way through the quiet corridors of Mercy General Hospital for her first night shift. As the new resident in the oncology department, she was eager to prove herself, even if it meant taking the dreaded midnight to 8 a.m. slot. The night started routinely enough. Teresa checked on patients, updated charts, and even managed to grab a quick coffee. But as the clock struck 3 a.m., something changed. The air grew heavy, and an unnatural silence fell over the ward. Teresa was making her rounds when she noticed something odd. Room 301, which had been empty earlier, now had its door closed. Puzzled, she checked her charts. No new admissions were scheduled. As she reached for the door handle, a chill ran down her spine. The metal was ice cold to the touch. Taking a deep breath, Teresa pushed the door open. The room was pitch black, save for a faint, pulsing glow emanating from the bed. Teresa fumbled for the light switch, but it didn't work. Heart pounding, she stepped closer to the bed. What she saw made her blood run cold. A figure lay there, but it wasn't human. Its skin was translucent, showing a network of black veins underneath. Its chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, each exhale releasing a wisp of glowing mist. Suddenly, the figure's eyes snapped open, solid black orbs that seemed to drink in the darkness around them. It turned its head towards Teresa, its mouth opening in a silent scream. Teresa stumbled backwards, slamming the door shut. She ran to the nurse's station, gasping for air. Room 301. She managed to choke out to the startled night nurse, "There's something in there." But when they returned with security, room 301 was empty. No sign of the creature, no evidence it had ever been there. Teresa's colleagues exchanged worried glances, clearly concerned about the new doctor's mental state. Over the next few nights, Teresa tried to convince herself it had been a hallucination brought on by stress and lack of sleep, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched whenever she was alone in the ward. Then patients began to complain about nightmares all eerily similar. They spoke of a shadowy figure standing over their beds, its black eyes peering into their souls, its touch leaving them feeling drained and weak. Teresa started to notice other things too. The way certain patients seemed to deteriorate rapidly overnight, far quicker than their conditions should allow. The inexplicable equipment malfunctions that only happened in the dead of night. The way the air grew cold in specific rooms, even when the heating was on full blast. Determined to uncover the truth, Teresa volunteered for more night shifts. She set up hidden cameras, motion sensors, anything she could think of to capture evidence of the entity. One night, as she reviewed the footage, Teresa's heart nearly stopped. There, flickering in and out of existence, was the creature she'd seen. It moved from room to room, hovering over patients, seeming to draw something out of them with its touch. But the most chilling discovery came when Teresa zoomed in on the creature's face. Behind those black eyes, she could make out familiar features. It was Mrs. Henderson, a patient who had died in room 301 just days before Teresa's first encounter. Dr. Teresa Chen's world at Millbrook General Hospital had already been turned upside down by the nightmarish entity haunting the oncology ward. But things were about to get even more complicated with the arrival of a new patient, Jenna Carter. Jenna was admitted to the psychiatric wing, just one floor below oncology. Her paperwork cited severe trauma and auditory hallucinations following an incident at her Victorian home. Teresa, covering an extra shift due to staff shortages, was asked to do Jenna's initial evaluation. The moment Teresa entered Jenna's room, she felt the same chill she'd experienced in the haunted oncology ward. Jenna sat motionless on her bed, staring at the wall, softly humming a melody that made Teresa's skin crawl. Miss Carter, Teresa called softly. I'm Dr. Chen. I'm here to talk with you. Jenna's head snapped towards Teresa, her eyes wide and unfocused. Do you hear it? She whispered. The melody, it never stops. As Teresa began the evaluation, she noticed strange parallels between Jenna's experiences and the phenomena in the oncology ward. Jenna spoke of entities that fed on fear and suffering, of souls trapped in an endless chorus of madness. It was different from the soul-draining creature Teresa had encountered, yet eerily similar in its malevolence. Over the next few nights, Teresa noticed an escalation in both Jenna's condition and the oncology hauntings. Patients in both wards reported more intense nightmares. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and always there was that faint melody drifting through the halls, growing stronger with each passing hour. Teresa began to suspect a connection. Could Jenna's presence have awakened something dormant in the hospital? Or perhaps attracted a new entity altogether? One night, as Teresa was reviewing camera footage from the oncology ward, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The familiar spectral figure was there, moving from room to room. But this time it paused, turning its black eyes directly towards the camera. And as it smiled, Teresa recognized the face. It was Jenna's. Panicked, Teresa rushed to the psychiatric ward, only to find Jenna's room empty. Following the sound of that haunting melody, Teresa found herself back in the oncology ward, standing before room 301, the epicenter of the hauntings. Inside, she found a scene of pure nightmare. Jenna stood in the center of the room, her form flickering between her human self and something other. Around her, spectral patients from the oncology ward swirled in a macabre dance, their faces contorted in eternal agony. You see now, don't you? Dr. Jenna's voice echoed, overlaid with countless others. Your hospital's hunger and my melody. They called to each other, two forms of eternity, finally united. As the spirits began to merge with Jenna, her form growing more monstrous with each absorption, she realized the terrifying truth: the entity from her ward and whatever possessed Jenna were combining, creating something far more powerful and malevolent. Join us, Teresa, the thing that was once Jenna beckoned. Add your song to our eternal symphony. As the merged entity reached for her, Teresa felt the cold touch of countless souls on her skin. The melody grew deafening, threatening to drown out her very thoughts. In that moment, Teresa knew that the fate of everyone in Mercy General hung in the balance. But as darkness closed in around her, Teresa wondered if it was already too late. For in Mercy General, the night shift was about to become a lot more terrifying.